Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to help you get the most out of your grappling ability and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 363. Today, we're talking about Jiu-Jitsu and conventional wisdom, or I guess the conventional wisdom of Jiu-Jitsu. You're going to hear a lot of the famous things like position before submission, or iron sharpens iron, and that sort of thing. And we're going to be batting these around a little bit and seeing if we agree or disagree with some of these. But there's usually some nugget of wisdom within each one. Anyways, I'm here with my good buddies, Joe and Gary. Gary, how you doing, my friend?
Oh, I am fabulous. How about you?
I'm fabulous as well. Not quite as much glitter on my end as you have at your place. Joe, I want to throw the quote of the week in your direction here. Winning doesn't always mean being first. This is by Bonnie Blair, the Speed Skater. Winning doesn't always mean being first. Winning means you're doing better than you've done before. So just looking for that improvement. And this is, clearly with a person who is an elite level racer, you want to win. But, maybe last time you got 10th place and now you got 6th place. That's you could mark that as a failure or a win, but one of the two attitudes will probably get you better off in the long run. Anyway, Joe, what do you think about that one? I know you're one for speed skating.
Winning doesn't always mean you're first. Of course it does. If you ain't first, you're last.
Oh, Ricky.
Well, yeah, I guess you got to separate the actual event and the podium. You've got to separate that from training and improving and sort of the grind of being a competitor, because in the truest sense, when it comes down to competition, winning means you're first. But if you have to win every match, so let's take this back to jiu-jitsu. If you have to win every match, if you've got to be the best guy on the mat during every class, if you just cannot accept a submission, in the end, that's going to come back to bite you. So from that standpoint, I couldn't agree with it more.
Well, first of all, I want to give props to another person from upstate in New York, Bonnie Blair. Anybody who grew up in upstate New York, we always heard about her, and somebody that we always admired. But I love this quote. I personally think winning is having fun. I can tell you, I do jiu-jitsu to have fun. That's about the only reason I do it, to have fun and hang out with my buddies. And I don't compete anymore. You think about it, trying to win. The majority of people who do jiu-jitsu just show up to have fun, just show up to learn. And, learning is winning. Having fun is winning. And, I think I win every time I step out onto that mat, step into the gym, even if I'm injured and, can't go that day. As long as I get to hang out with my friends, I won.
Yeah, that's Gary, I see that in you when you're on the mats. You're out there, and your goal is to have fun. And from what it looks like, you basically always reach that goal. And you're also, I think part of your enjoyment is getting better and learning and also sharing.
Yeah.
So, but looking at this and looking at like elite level grapplers, they have to win. They have to do well in order to continue to get sponsorships or to get invited to the next big tournament or whatever your goal is. But having interviewed several, a couple hundred grapplers, a lot of them will do a kind of a tune-up tournament where they don't expect to win, but they expect to test maybe a game plan or a system, and they'll see how that goes, and they want to get it. Yeah, I want to do a couple tournaments before the big one so I can see how, what I need to tune up a little bit, and they'll go jump in a smaller tournament, and they might lose it because they're not playing around. They're testing things. They're throwing up against the wall and seeing what sticks, like the old spaghetti test, and that's winning in the long run. That enables them to test their jiu-jitsu, to make some tweaks with it, and then win the big tournament, or that they actually want to win. Get that gold medal, I mean. I didn't know you were such a big Bonnie Blair fan, Gary.
You know, anybody from upstate New York, yes. She is one of the legends. And, you know, it's pride of upstate New York.
Way to represent, my man. I know Joe is a big speed skater.
If I remember right, I think she's from like Cornwall, if I remember right, somewhere out that way.
That sounds about right. Good old
I'm looking her up.
Wikipedia.
It is correct. I just found it.
Sure you did. Hard to prove, but there we go. Gary just remembered that. A highly Googleable fact.
How would you not remember that?
Now I know. And I'll forget that by tomorrow. That's me more than anything. So before we even got started here, I was talking to Joe, and he said he was bringing an off-the-mat lesson. And I'm excited to hear this before we get to our main topic. So, Joe, what do you have for us, my friend?
Well, at the time we're recording this is October 25th, so we're just kind of getting to winding down hurricane season. And for our listeners, it doesn't mean as much to Gary and Bob. Hopefully, yes. Doesn't mean quite as much to Byron and Gary because they're well inland, but I spend my time on the Gulf Coast, Louisiana and Texas specifically. About a 300-mile stretch there where I'm at work. I'm near New Orleans for 2 weeks, and then I'm home near Houston for 2 weeks, south of both locations. So I'm actually down by the coast. And then, of course, twice a month I have to drive I-10 between those two locations to get to and from work. And this year it's been, I mean, as soon as a hurricane blows through and I feel like I'm catching my breath, I check the National Hurricane Center website, and there's another one popped up. And I swear after the last one, I told my wife, I said, well, we should be good now. We're close enough to the end of the season. And there's another one getting ready to cross the Yucatan Peninsula tonight. Tomorrow it'll be into the Gulf of Mexico on Tuesday, and it looks like it's heading for right where I'm sitting at work on Wednesday. And I just feel like, man, it's just one after another. And I was thinking about a couple of ways that can relate to jiu-jitsu, and I think they're pretty good pictures. One is as a company. So for those of you who don't know, I work for a company that operates vessels that provide support to the offshore oil and gas industry. And so obviously when the hurricanes come through, we have to protect our assets, starting with our people first. We got to make sure that the boats are not in harm's way so that our crew is not in harm's way. We got to make sure that our shore-based personnel is set up to work from a remote location if necessary. You know, if it comes right up to Morgan City where our office is, we've got to make arrangements for that. And so every hurricane season starts out with a fleet-wide exercise where we put out a mock scenario, and all the vessels, all the office staff, they all respond. And then we review that, and we use that going forward into the season and see what we can learn and how we can improve in our emergency response. And a lot of years, we get one or two storms that affect us where we actually have to put our hurricane preparedness and response plan into place. But this year, we have a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And this year, we've been at the phase 1 probably 8 or 10 times. And we've been phase 2 a half a dozen times, and 2 or 3 of those we've got to the phase 3 where it's serious. And these are the years where we learn the most. You know, we get to see how people react when the pressure's on. If there's a procedures or policies that aren't written very well, that becomes exposed when people are, you know, trying to implement those procedures under pressure. And that is so true on the mats as well. If you like to compete in an organization where the let's just say, for example, leg locks are sort of phased in as you go up in belt level, and you've reached a point now where it's really opening up, and you think, boy, I have to work on my leg lock defense. You can watch tutorials, and you can do some slow and methodical drilling with some partners, and you can pick your coach's brain, and all of that will help you get better. But if you've got a tournament 4 months out, where you're going to have to be defending leg locks at some time in between then and now, you've got to put yourself in the fire. You've got to find some teammates that are relentless leg lockers, and you've got to roll with them, and that's going to expose the weaknesses in your game plan that you're developing. So that's the first life lesson that I'm dragging mats. I'll let you guys pick these you want to run with. And the other one is I just personally feel fatigued from being in this hurricane preparedness mode nonstop this year. And I was thinking about that the philosophy of always be attacking when you're on the mats. And you guys know that guard retention drill where your opponent kind of throws you're on your back, you got your feet on his hips, and he kind of throws them to your right, and you take your right foot and put it back on his hip, and you use that to square back up, and then he goes the other way, and you take your left foot and put it on his hip and use that to square back up. And sometimes a good guard passer will make you feel like you're just frantically doing that drill, and you're grabbing for grips, and eventually he's going to get a half step ahead of you and going to just cut through your guard. So this hurricane season just had me thinking about that a lot, about the value of being an offensive player and just relentlessly pressuring, and eventually you're just going to wear the guy down and he's going to make a mistake. So those are the two things I'm learning from this hurricane season, guys.
Joe, we feel for you, man. That sounds like it's been stressful at bare minimum. It's been a stressful event season, and man, hopefully next year it won't be so bad. But your guard passing example kind of reminded me of, like as these months tick by and as these preparedness, things that you're doing happen at home and at work, like kind of like the guard passer, as he's trying to pass your guard, sometimes you kind of get in your head, he's not going to pass. Like it's not going to happen. And then you get a little complacent with it, and then he passes. Like, do you feel like, so I know you've had some bad hurricane experiences, so I don't, it's like, I guess that's relatable to somebody who passes your guard and then drops an elbow right in your face as they do it and then smashes you for the remainder of the time. Like, that's a miserable, okay, that person, I definitely don't want to pass my guard. But, having the bad experience, you definitely don't want to be caught off guard with the hurricane. But after all these times, you said you're getting fatigue from this. Do you feel like there's a risk of being a little complacent with some of your preparations, or you're not quite as thorough as you were in the beginning of the season, just because you're wearing out? I mean, that could be a thing that you have to watch out for. Maybe, a later one could be harder to mentally and actually prepare for.
Yeah, I believe that's absolutely true. I heard one time years ago about boxers that you'll be more effective with your power punches if you don't throw every punch as hard as you can. Because if you throw every punch as hard as you can, your opponent's not going to want to eat one of them. They're a hyper alert to not get caught. But when you start just kind of pity-patting, they start letting a few get through. And, I think that's applicable to hurricane preparedness. And I also think you're right that if you're that offensive player and every pass attempt you're 100% in, it might be more difficult than if you sort of throw some jabs, so to speak.
And that's why Byron was a good boxer, even though he was flat out garbage. Because what he would do is he would just go out and he'd throw haymakers, as hard as he could every time. But to a trained boxer, it was like something really soft. So every now and then one would get through.
There you go. I have done, I'm not a boxer, very limited sparring, but back in the day, John would have us put on the gloves occasionally and spar. And I remember one guy, quite a bit bigger and more skilled in boxing. We started off and we're just, kind of working their paces and getting hit a little bit, but not real hard, and about every 45 seconds, he just drilled me. I'm like, what is going, like, I thought we had a certain pace going. And then a hard punch sneaks in.
Byron, you never told me we had a pace going.
It was frustrating because it was like we're playing this level. It's like, we're kind of being playful, and then all of a sudden, I'm slamming on like a really fast Kimura and rolling, and like we had a speed going. I thought, maybe he was doing more of a boxing thing where he's like, it was weird. We weren't actually. It was kind of like a difference between a little bit more sparring than drill, a little bit less drill than sparring, kind of in the middle there, for my thought. And then occasionally he just knocks me in my butt. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm up for this today. So anyway, definitely get lulled into a sense of like what we're doing, and occasionally that's when you get hit a little harder. But I'm not really big into boxing. That's one of the reasons, I guess.
Yeah, we know.
That's why it's a jiu-jitsu podcast. That's why we're having jiu-jitsu conventional wisdom and not boxing conventional wisdom. Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. That's basically what that is.
Is that our quote of the week?
No, we had the quote from Bonnie Blair. Remember that, Gary? Oh, Gary. Is this a senior moment?
Cornwall. The lady from Cornwall, New York.
No, yeah. And you had 2 lessons off that, Joe, and that's the one I ran with, I guess. So, have you had a big one hit or impact your job, like you had one hit your house? Has that happened yet since you've been working in that location?
Well, the first year I worked down here, I was still flying back and forth from Oregon. I was working on the boats at that time and not in the office. The first year I worked down here was the year of Katrina and Rita.
Okay.
So that was kind of an eye opener,
And then you packed up and moved down there.
I know, right?
Joe.
Joe, what are the odds you're going to have 2 years like that in a row?
Yeah.
So.
Joe, anytime you want to move to Wichita, Kansas, we're going to help you out the best we can. There's not much of a shipping and oil drilling or boat industry here in Wichita.
Oh shoot, Byron, we got a river right downtown.
We have a shallow river that creeps through town. You could put a canoe on.
Get a flat bottom boat and do boat tours.
Joe could walk across.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing that, Joe, and we're hoping that the season ends very quickly for hurricanes.
Yes.
So I was thinking about this conventional wisdom, and this was Joe's idea, which I really appreciated. And there's a couple of we'll run through half a dozen or so of these ideas, but these are good in 2 ways. One way is as a student. Your coach will say this, or maybe you pick it up on a podcast, and you apply it, or you apply parts of it, and it helps guide you in making your decisions or the way you are as a martial artist. The other way is it's a teaching tool. These things have a way of sticking in your brain and reminding you of a piece of wisdom from somebody who has, got a lot of experience and really have something to share. And then they've been passed around the community for a long time because there's a lot of validity to at least parts of these. I don't think I'm going to agree with all of these, but we'll see where we go. Any thoughts in general about these things and how they could be used? Because I do think that if you're a blue belt and you tell a white belt that you need to be grip fighting. Grip fighting is a huge deal in jiu-jitsu. Or hey, don't be chasing your next belt. That's a recipe for heartbreak or heartache, or it's the wrong goal. That sort of thing. Like those are things that can actually help people enjoy and progress in the journey in a way that's more sustainable.
Well, just in a general sense, I think that as we talk through this, I think we're all going to agree, not necessarily on a particular piece of wisdom, but that some of these are good examples of a rule is a good rule at certain times in your progression, but some of these are also good examples that all rules need to be broken at some point, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Rules are meant to be broken. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but it's the same thing with like, I don't know, we'll just say cooking or ice skating or like if you're going to be breaking rules, you got to really know the system and know when it's appropriate to bend or break a rule in order for it to pay off.
Yes, I think that's why it's contextual and it's at different points in your journey. If you want to just jump in, the one I'm thinking at is position before submission.
Yeah.
I think that's a great rule of thumb, and especially early on where you're getting your self-defense chops, so to speak, and you're learning the game, and you don't want to spend all class smashed in bottom side control. But some people, and that's why it's contextual, they develop a really good submission game and a really good scramble game. I think Gary probably fits into this, kind of being a leg locker. I don't think Gary gets a dominant top position and then has my main goal is to not lose this position. Yeah. So,
Joe, I would say the opposite. Even on my leg locks, I am very big in control. I want to control that limb before I start attacking the end of that limb. And I think I think sometimes I over control, even, working in Ashi from seated guard. A lot of times I'm not even back on that ankle when I fall back. I'm on the knee. I want 100% control of that big limb before I start attacking.
So Gary, let me butt in and you can correct me here. I guess maybe part of the issue is understanding the difference between positions. Because I guess I'm thinking of it as giving up a top position, but you're actually thinking of it as improving your position, even though you might go from top to bottom because you're always in control.
Yeah, that would be fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I mistook what you were saying there, Joe. But yeah, because sometimes for leg locks we are going to have to go from top to bottom or top to inverted or wherever we're going to be, and that does kind of go against the position before submission.
Well, not necessarily. I think it just indicates that your understanding of positions is maybe at a higher level than the guy that looks at your game and thinks, oh, he's giving up position. But you're not really giving up position. You're moving to a position that for you is actually a pretty superior position.
Yeah. And, I was working with a guy Friday night. We were training and kind of working Kimuras. And he's a pretty new grappler. And it's funny because this is the exact same thing I told him, position before submission. I would let him get that far side underhook, and he'd pull me up, move to north south, and just jump on that Kimura and try to turn it real quick while I just get my back to the mat. And that was my big thing. It's like, hey, don't put the submission first. It'll come first. When you have a better understanding, is like what you're saying, Joe. But right now, we got to get to that position, but we got to lock down all avenues of escape. We got to be tight in there before we start twisting that arm and making him look like the Exorcist.
Byron, weigh in on this, but I think this rule is almost always thought of as in, don't give up your position to go for a submission. Don't go for submission if it means you're going to end up in a worse position. But I lately have been thinking about it a little differently in that improving my position should be as high of a goal as getting a submission, especially if the submission is hard to come by. And an example I would give is if I'm in top side control and I've tried for a minute and a half in training to attack the far arm and it's just not there, probably a better use of my time in training is to then start thinking about how can I improve my position. The submission's not there, so how can I get to mount? How can I force my opponent to expose their back? What do you think about that way of looking?
Yeah, that's a good way. If you look at the statistics, it's easier to improve your position than actually get a submission because there's several improved positions typically before a submission is cemented. It's just like it's easier to sweep somebody from your guard than it is to submit somebody from your guard. Maybe not yours in particular, but there's a lot more guard sweeps than there are guard submissions. See, so and once you improve that position enough, you either end up in mount or back control, where the submissions will come a little easier than from a less dominant position. For me, this one is always one that you hear a frustrated coach yelling at a student as they are mounted, so they're on their back and they're trying to sneak in a little choke or something. Like, that's to me where like this red flag is like, that's the wrong thing. and then giving some leeway towards the competitor who's down by 15 points. There's 30 seconds left, and they do happen to have a pretty good grip in the collar or something like that. Like, that's where bending or breaking the rules is, maybe. But I'm always a fan of controlling the person before you try that submission. It's easier to get that control because they're going to fight hard once that submission is starting to get locked in. So if you kind of lock them up first, that's why Gary's leg locks are really hard to escape, because he spent the time and the effort to lock up your leg in a way that it's going to be tough to get out. And so he didn't go for the submission, a little too, excited and a little too fast. He spent his time and energy making sure that the door was closed to my escape, and then he's going to apply the submission at a more relaxed and, to be honest, a safer manner. And I think that the submission or position before submission is a big one that you hear a lot early on. If you're trying to do those things, your guard is getting passed and you're just holding on to that choke that's just not going to work. You need to recover your guard back before they pass it all the way. That being said, I'm always a sucker for those sweeps that are like those style of sweeps where they basically let you pass, and in that manner of your pass, there's a boom, they hit that sweep, just perfect timing. And I tell all the people I train with, like, I'm a sucker for those because I always want to pass. That's my job. If I'm in your guard, my job is to pass. And if you give me that opportunity, I'm going to take it. Even if I see a sweep is possibly there, I know that a lot of times it's not there. The attempted sweep is there, but if I could get heavy or lean back or, base out or kick out of it or whatever the case may be, I could deny their sweep attempt, and there they go, giving up that position to do, I guess, a sweep. But I'm a sucker for those. When they hit and they work, it's funny to me. It's like, man, they did it and it worked. And I think back to the chokes that have rendered me sleepy time, put me unconscious. Every one of them, I've been in top position. I think a couple of them were in the guard, and a couple of them I was in top side control, and I had one I did one that Jake Smith did that choke where they lock it up and then you pass. Jake Fox did that. You lock it up and then you let him pass. I passed the side, and then I was like, man, this is getting tighter. And then I went to mount, and then he woke me up. So technically it ended with me in mount. But the problem with all of those chokes is I thought I was going to be okay. I don't like to get, choked unconscious. But if I think I can get out, I try to hold on a little bit longer. I try to work my technique. And even with like a good triangle choke or a good gi choke I've been put to sleep with a triangle choke in the guard. I've been put to sleep with a gi choke from the guard. And in both those, I thought I was going to get out. I thought, well, I know this is tight and I'm getting a little dizzy and maybe my arms are getting a little bit numb, but I'm still going to work. I'm still going to get out of this thing. And if any of those chokes, I thought, well, I'm stuck. I'd have tapped. But all of them, I was working to improve my position when I got tagged. And for me, that's why the non-dominant submissions are a little extra scary for me because I know they're more likely to put me to sleep because I don't want to tap to that, because I know that most of the time it just falls apart when you put pressure back on it. And that may be students hear that and they go, oh, that's the ones I want to work on, ones that actually put a black belt to sleep. But your time is far better spent learning to get a dominant position and then just close that door like Gary does, and I got nowhere to go. I'll tap way earlier. My odds of escape are very low versus all the other submissions where I was getting choked a little bit from a good position and I got out. That happens way more often. So time spent, learning how to submit people from a good position is always going to be better money spent there, in my opinion.
Hey, Joe, I just sent you some notes for our drilling session tomorrow. We're going to work on non-dominant submissions and sweeps off letting our opponent pass guard. So we're going to work on that for the next couple of weeks.
I love me a good baseball bat joke.
Yeah. And those sweeps were great. And I usually see them coming, but it's like, I got a chance to pass here. I think I could defend the sweep. And statistically, I'm a black belt. I roll with a lot of lower belts, and a lot of times I defend the sweep just fine. But sometimes I go for a ride. And I always laugh at myself a little bit when that happens to me, because there I was chasing the improved position a little bit too hard. So, yeah, that's a good one to start off with, because if you haven't heard that one, I think you're fairly new to jiu-jitsu. Position before submission is a common one that it's really hard to disagree with on a fundamental level. But then again, there's times, you're down on points and time's ticking and getting close. You got to try something. But I got to know if I'm trying to choke Gary or Joe while they have me in mount, I'm probably going to get armbarred. That's what I would expect. It's worth a shot, but how about one about belts?
I'm going to fall to my back and attack your legs.
I never know what to expect. How about one about belt chasing? Students are sometimes told don't chase the next belt. So what does that mean, and what kind of advice is that?
Gary, you want to start, or you want me to tell you how?
Might as well have the no-gi guy start.
Who's never chased a belt in his life?
Have you worn your black belt since it was awarded to you?
No. This one here, I can think of two ways it goes. First of all, I think, on the surface, it's saying, don't put everything into just getting the belt. Show up, learn what your instructor teaches you, be a good student, practice hard, show up, and, the belt will come. That's kind of what I think when I see it. But I also think, too, chasing belt may not be such a bad idea. And when I say that, I don't mean, asking my coach, when's my next belt, which I think is a big no-no. But I think sometimes it keeps them motivated to stay into this game. Really working to get, let's say they're purple belt, they're a blue now, and really, really trying to get better to get that. If it keeps you in the game, if it keeps you training, makes you train a little bit more, shoot, I'm all okay for chasing a belt. If you have a good attitude and you're not asking your instructor.
Gary, that's largely the attitude that I came to have over the last few years. And then recently I started second guessing that a little bit. I found myself a couple years ago when people would have this conversation about how bad belt chasing was. I found myself kind of defending people a little bit who appeared to be belt chasing, because I said, I don't believe they just want the next color of belt. I don't believe they just want the status that comes with it. I think most of the people that say, I really want to get my purple belt, what they really mean is, I want to be at that level. Yeah. And I think that's what you're getting at. And so yes. I don't think that's horrible, but I also have started to contemplate more recently that if you put too much time, too much mental energy into that endeavor when it's a long ways away, it's like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And if you're constantly looking 1,000 miles down the path, you're going to be stumbling and falling.
Good point.
So I think the way you're looking at it is the way I've generally looked at it, and so I don't believe it's too bad. But I do think that your mental energy and focus is probably better served if you're worried about how can I get better over the next 6 weeks, as opposed to how can I reach this goal that's 18 months away.
But yeah, I love that point. But I'm also thinking, you made me think of something else when we were talking about it. You're talking about a goal 6 weeks away. Because I do like what you're saying about the journey of 1,000 steps. But I personally think we probably put in a bunch of small goals. We have couples, 6-week goal, a 6-month goal, a 1-year goal, a 1.5-year goal to get my purple belt. You're looking down, the path. Some people, I think maybe it could be too much for you. You put too much pressure on yourself. But I also, I don't know. I just sit there and while you're talking about it, I was thinking about work. We got a lot of people who aspire to get the next promotion. To get promotion two promotions up. I think about that too. Those people are considered, go-getters. So why is it a little different in jiu-jitsu versus in the business world? I don't know. I just guess I have a lot of different thoughts about it. I can see both ways, but I don't know. I just have trouble. How do I say it? If somebody's trying to get better, and as long as they're doing it in the right way, I do want to keep saying that. I don't want somebody asking my instructor, should I be a blue belt now? I think I should be, and that's not the way to go about it.
Yeah. So maybe as older guys and guys that have been on the mats for a long time, sometimes if somebody's like, oh man, I really want that next belt, and we kind of know what they mean. They're not chasing a colored piece of cloth, but sometimes we take the lazy way out in giving advice and just say, well, it's not the best use of your time to be focused on a goal that's 2 years down the road and you should be chasing the next belt. Maybe a more nuanced explanation is sometimes in order. Sometimes we just throw out these cliches, don't chase the next belt, and maybe sometimes a more nuanced explanation is in order.
Good point, Joe.
So the idea of chasing the belt, or we talked. You guys mentioned about asking coach, and I think if you want to talk to your coach about it, that's a conversation you should be able to have, but you don't want to do it in a way where you're telling them how to do their job. You can just as well say, what do I got to do to get to the next level? What part of my game do you think is the weakest part? What part of my game should I pick up? Maybe it's the best part. Maybe make the stronger parts even stronger. Those sort of things versus, hey, when am I going to get my purple belt? Don't say that. Just say, what do I got to do to get to the next level? What's my weakness? Any areas where I can improve that stand out to you? Those are all going to be better things. And Gary, I totally understand you saying like people at work who want to excel and do well and often do that fast. You have somebody who's been there for a short amount of time and they've been promoted 3 times already. That's not an accident. They're working hard to do that. And so is that okay in jiu-jitsu? I think it is. But the other idea is to get promoted, sometimes people do things that are a little shady. and so maybe, a coach has a lot of respect for Joe and the way he rolls. And you know what? I may be a belt lower than Joe, but when I roll as Joe, I want to A, make sure coach watches, and B, make sure Joe's tired before I get him. And I'm going to take a couple of easy rounds before I get to Joe, and then I'm going to kind of show off at Joe's expense, and that way coach knows or gets to see a glimpse of how I'm at a better level. And that's just one thought that popped in my head. But it's like, it's not, I think chasing the belt, you have to kind of be seen by somebody else as doing better, your coach, versus just improve as a martial artist, improve as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and the rest is going to happen naturally. Like you're at work, do a good job, like help the team and do your work to the best that it's assigned to you and the best that you could do. And it'll happen. It may take a month longer than if you kind of did it the shady way and threw somebody under the bus and didn't take responsibility when something went wrong that you actually had a blame in. But if you do things the right way, it still happens. And one thing I was told is enjoy the belts. You're only there for so long. Joe, you're a brown belt. After you're done being a brown belt, you'll never be a brown belt again. Like, that's over. What would it be like to go back and be a blue belt or a white belt for a little while and just come in and have like that freedom to ask any weird question or not understand something that's really basic? And those days are gone at some point in time. Enjoy the ride, guys. It's not about getting to the next belt level. It is about getting better, though.
Byron, I like what you were saying. I was going to say you you won the internet, but I'm going to save that because Joe will probably say something.
He'll say it
a little bit later. But I like what you said is, just take your time. It'll come. Just be a good teammate. I like when you said that too. There is more than just being a great grappler. And, it comes on, we got a lot of these things we're going to talk about, but, being a good teammate, showing up, working hard, paying attention, helping others get to the top. And, building that team up. As your team gets better, everybody else in that room is going to get better, and it's just going to get to that next level quicker. And I know, Byron, you just said enjoy the ride. But, I think somebody would rather get it a week earlier the right way without cheating. I like what you said there, Byron.
I think I've told the story before, and it kind of goes right along with what Byron was saying. And Gary, I think we can go ahead and give Byron the internet this week. That was pretty.
No. Hold on, Joe. You say something pretty smart towards the end of the show every time.
No. Anyway, I was going to say I've told this story before. When I got my blue belt, I guess I went through a phase of the blue belt blues that I didn't even know it at the time. It wasn't until later that I thought, well, maybe that is what the blue belt blues are. And I wasn't chasing my purple belt. I didn't think I was. But I was really wanting to get better and didn't feel like I was. And I knew I was getting older. I wasn't 50 yet at that time. I was in my late 40s. And I remember sort of starting to have this conversation with myself over a couple of weeks, like, what if I don't get any better? I mean, what if this is as good as it gets? And I finally just kind of asked myself, if this is as good as I'm going to be, and I'm going to train for the next 20 years, and I'm just going to be at a decent blue belt level, is that good enough? Am I still going to enjoy grappling? Am I still going to enjoy being involved in jiu-jitsu? And the answer was yes. And ironically, like 6 months later, I got my purple belt. And I think I just allowed like a weight to be lifted off of my shoulders. I guess sort of like Gary was talking about at the beginning of the show. It was no longer about I have to be better, I have to be better, I have to. It was just, let's just go to class and have fun, and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah. I love that you said that, Joe, because, Byron, you said something a minute ago about, our goal is to get better. And, our goal is to get better. But, and Joe, we're both getting up there a little bit in age, and we don't get as better as quick. I still think I am getting better. But I'm still going to enjoy this and still have a smile on my face every time I'm getting worse. As long as I can do something I love to do, and I don't have that pressure on myself of, am I a world champion? Am I a city champion? Am I the gym champion? I just have fun, and I know there's going to be a point of diminishing returns, and it's funny. I was rolling with a guy yesterday, and we're in a scramble, and I made a nice technical move to free my arm, and it turned into a scramble. I hadn't even got off the ground before the guy was already on top of me, already like 7 steps ahead of me. And I just remember just laughing and talking about that while we're rolling. But, hey, I don't care. I may be slower now, but and I'm going to lose some scrambles. But I'm going to give it everything I have and try my hardest and always have fun.
Yeah. So you're kind of hinting at another one, Gary, as far as like physical attributes versus technique. And at some point in time, if you do jiu-jitsu long enough, the practitioner that it was last year's model might be able to beat the one that's this year's model. And that might not happen until you're 70 or 80. What was that?
Last year's model. I love that.
Gary has just been called a model. Congratulations. But at some point in time, you might lose a little ground. And I don't think that I've seen that in Gary. Like, I think every year Gary not only gets better at jiu-jitsu, so technique-wise, but this year's Gary would just beat last year's Gary. Like, I think that's real. And but he's talking about the year that doesn't happen. And so we don't know when this year will be, but eventually the 99-year-old Gary is not going to beat the 90-year-old Gary. Like,
I hope I make it to 99.
I hope you do too, buddy. But at some point in time, you'll hit a little bit of decline in actual performance, but you could still learn, you could still grow, you could still teach, and that's kind of what Joe was getting at. What if this is my peak? What if this is as good as I'm going to get? And thinking back as a blue belt, Joe, what a ridiculous thought. Like, of course you'll get better.
Know, right?
Like, that's not going to, you're not going to stay here forever. You're going to improve. Like, I can't imagine telling one of our listeners that they're maxed out at their blue belt level. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to do. But it's funny to think back. Like, that was a thought in my head. But it's cool that you were okay with it, though. That's interesting, Joe. And you proceeded to train.
Well, what I was going to say, Gary, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and I think it's a great thing for our listeners who might be 35 or 42 years old to hear. There have been so many points in my life where athletically where I've thought, boy, I've got to get things done because in 2 years,
yes,
how much slower and weaker. But honestly, I don't feel, there's a decline, but it's not, like I started skateboarding at one point in my 40s thinking, I've got to get good at it now because when I'm 50, I won't skate any longer. I'll be too old to skate. And I didn't even stick with it that time. And then I ironically started again when I was 50, and I've been skating for the last 3 years. And thinking when I'm 46, 47 years old, I'm almost too old to be doing jiu-jitsu. And now I'm 53, and I don't feel a lot older than I did when I was 47. So for the 35-year-old out there that thinks they're getting too old, you've still got a ton of time.
Joe, you now won the internet. And I was going to say the same thing when I was trying to interrupt Byron, too, is I remember, I think I was maybe 36 at a time, just started training. And, somebody's teaching a triangle. And I just remember thinking, man, there's no way at 36 I'm going to be able to do triangles. That's a young person's game. And and you just hear stuff all the time that, an average citizen, you're not going to get better at something, athletically as you start getting into your 30s, 40s, 50s. I just remember growing up, somebody who's 50 years old. That guy's an old geezer, sorry to say that. Hope I didn't offend anybody, but it's not true. As long as you don't let it happen. Joe picking up skateboarding, in his 40s. Me and Joe doing jiu-jitsu at 53. And the one good thing that happened to me that got me into jiu-jitsu, and Byron, you were talking earlier about, I don't even know what you're talking about. There's that age.
I was rambling probably.
But, most of you guys know, basketball was always my sport. I played every day up until, I was 30 years old. And I set such high expectations of myself. That's what I was going to say. I had such high expectations of myself. I couldn't lose. I always had to perform at this level. And then I moved to Wichita, Kansas. And I didn't really know anybody. So I just started going around to parks and gyms to play basketball. But it wasn't the same because I wasn't playing with my buddies and stuff like that. And so I didn't play every day like I used to. I used to play 3 hours a day. So maybe I was only playing twice a week. And my game got worse. And it was really hard for me because I was so used to playing at a certain expectation. I needed to play at this certain level, and I couldn't do it. I needed to win every time. So like a bad person does, I kind of quit. I quit jiu-jitsu, I quit basketball, and I just started working out with weights. And a few years later, I decided to hit jiu-jitsu. So the good part is I quit basketball for a long time, and if I didn't do that, I probably would have never took up jiu-jitsu. But then I came to jiu-jitsu. I started later in life. I don't remember if it's 35 or 36, but I had no expectations. I didn't expect to be good. I never in my life has expected to be good at this. I had no pressure. I've already, trained for that level in another sport and always put that pressure on me. And, it didn't do me any good putting that pressure on me. And so I just came in here, no pressure whatsoever. And that's why I always talk about my goal is just to have a smile, that I enjoy training. And so I'm just kind of glad that somehow I jumped on the jiu-jitsu bandwagon.
Gary, you said something that kind of caught me. You said, like a bad person, I quit. I feel that quitting is often a great thing. Now, it just depends on what you're doing. Did you replace it with something? Like, for COVID, I'm training less than probably anybody. Yeah. Like, I'm training with my wife, and I've trained a couple of police officers that were having trouble in the academy. So as of now, my jiu-jitsu's basically been on pause. What have I replaced it with? Well, I'm running a lot of like 5Ks. Like, I'm running 3 or 4 miles at a time.
You're a bad person.
Trying to pick up something. I just you just have to adapt a little bit. And so if you same mentality, like if you start working at McDonald's or Subway or whatever, like, never quit. Okay. Do they have a retirement program, or how many years do you expect to put in with it before you never quit? Like, there's a time and a place for things, and sometimes you have to adjust or move on or look for something better. And quitting or trying something that may not be right, like maybe I should try jiu-jitsu, but I don't want to quit if I don't like it. No, just try it. And you know what? If you don't like it, find something that fits you better. And there's a good chance jiu-jitsu is going to be great for you, though. But if you have the attitude like, I can't quit, well, it's going to be hard to start things and to test new things. So, there's definitely things like, I wanted to quit when I ran cross country in 7th grade. I wanted to quit that. That was miserable. It was really hard, and I didn't like it. I had to stick it out, and that's fine. It's like that sort of thing is okay. But like, just to test something and to feel like you're locked into it because you don't want to be a quitter. As long as you replace it with something that's equal or better, I think you're more of a tester than a quitter.
Byron, I actually didn't really mean it that way. I meant it that something I've been doing so long, that I quit. I mean, to be honest with you, because I couldn't perform to the level. It was kind of a mental thing, and I felt like it was a weakness where, in all reality, because I did enjoy it. I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much because I wasn't playing with my buddies. But
do you think if 3 of your buddies moved with you and played all the time, and you still declined, you would still be playing basketball regularly?
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because basketball was my sport, that it's what I did. And I played at a level, and I had that warrior mindset, that I always have to get better, that I have to perform at this level. And I think, I guess I can go to kind of what you just said a minute ago. I replaced it with something else that I didn't put pressure on myself.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that was, that could have been a good thing. I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, I replaced it, which, like you said, there's nothing wrong with it if you find something to replace it with. And I guess I came into it because I had known that, I had held myself to high standards and I couldn't live up to that. Jiu-jitsu, I came in with no standards. And kind of like when I pick my friends, like Byron, no standards. But I guess it made it easier for me to suck. And I didn't care about sucking when I first started jiu-jitsu, which everybody's going to have a hard time. And I just enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed the sport, and I took the winning and losing out of it.
Yeah, that's actually, Gary, that's a great way to look at it. And it's actually, I think, a piece of conventional wisdom that we didn't add to our list that's important. And that's kind of, you hear it all the time, to embrace the suck. You gotta learn to like the struggle a little bit to get good at something like jiu-jitsu, I think.
Yes, good point.
Yep.
Isn't that David Goggins, embrace the suck? That's where I've heard it from.
Yeah, I'm not real sure, but I think it's sort of a common.
Yeah,
he's big on that, though. He's big on it's going to hurt, it's going to suck. But I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm unfortunate that it's going to be a good workout as well. But I have to. It's a fun process for me, and that's why running and doing my kettlebell routines with a lot less jiu-jitsu than I've been accustomed to has been difficult, and it has been a little bit more trying. It's like I gotta okay, I'm gonna run today. Let's do that first thing in the morning and get that out of the way. Whereas jiu-jitsu is like, I get to go train today. I'm pumped and it's going to be fun. And like, It's just a different mindset where I am having to embrace the sucky parts of fitness, which are not as enjoyable. So maybe I'll download some new music to help it go a little bit better, or
Yeah, Boy George has a new single out.
Okay.
But Byron, you're talking about, it's not as fun doing your kettlebell workouts. But, I know that picture you sent to Joe and I the other day. We can tell you've been doing a lot of kettlebell curls because your biceps are getting bigger. So congratulations.
I'm glad you got that, Gary. And we're impressed. Kettlebell curls, indeed. I like to put them, I don't have to bend down and pick them up every time, so I get a squat bench, or I get a bench press bench to put them on. And usually it's in the squat
rack.
You
should put them in the squat rack.
by the biggest mirror I could find, because that's important for me too. Anyway, guys, Joe, you're a key guy. We'll just pass Gary on this one. Always win the grip fight, and I say that about Gary because grip fighting is a whole different deal with the gi on versus not the gi. But grips are important without the gi as well. But what are your thoughts on the grip fight, Joe?
Well, actually, I don't see this as really being gi dependent because it's maybe more of a positional thing than grabbing cloth. I mean, if your opponent's getting a really good collar tie on you, you can't let them keep having that. If they've got really good wrist control, you can't let them keep having that. And maybe there's two aspects of grip fighting. You tell me what you think. That there's the one about whatever your opponent's trying to do, you don't let them do it. And then there's also the idea that whatever you're trying to do, there are certain grips that you want to have. So do you prioritize getting the grips you want over denying grips? Where do you stand on that, Byron?
Dominant grips is what I'm looking for.
So you're less concerned. You're less concerned about breaking their grips.
If they're gripping my sleeve, that's not going to work for me. I've got to deal with that. My biggest, this one here, much like the position before submission, I see this happen a lot at the lower levels where they know that the grip fight is important. And so they get their grips. Let's just say a blue belt's playing guard and I'm working the pass. And they get their grips, I break the grips, I get my own grips. And then they break my grips and they establish theirs. And then I break them and I get my grips again. Well, this seems like an endless game. And so they move on to something else. That happens. That's what happens. After 3 or 4 grip fights, it's just going to be the person that did give up on it. And they're going to do something that is not plan A anymore. And that's when the pass is a lot easier. Like, you can't just concede a deep collar grip as you're passing the guard. I can't let that happen. Like, it's too important. It's going to throw off my passing. It's going to put me in lots of trouble. I have to break that. I break it once. They get it again. I break it again. They get it again. Well, I got to pass sometime, so I'm just going to ignore it this time. That's when I'm going to get swept. That's when I'm going to get choked. So just know that it's important to win, and you have to keep fighting it. And some people have really strong hands, and it's 2 hands versus 1 sometimes isn't enough to break that grip, and you have to learn some different techniques about attacking the strength of their hand, or the angle that you pull, or securing the gi before you break the grip, or moving your head as you pop out of the tie up. Different things. It's not all just strength related, but it's like some hands aren't twice as strong. They're like 10 times stronger than your grip, and it's incredible to feel that. And that's something that you notice as an experienced grappler is like, this person has strong hands. I noticed that before almost anything else, because you're breaking grips almost right away. And when a grip break fails and then you go a little bit harder and it fails again, and then you're like, man, okay. I know they have some sort of grappling experience, or they turn wrenches all day long or something like that. Like, they've got really strong hands.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've been trying to focus on recently in this regard is keeping in mind that prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you could just prevent them from getting the grips in the first place, or prevent them from getting the grip as deep as they want it, it makes the whole battle a lot easier. You talk about that deep collar grip. Man, if a good seasoned opponent gets a deep collar grip, that's hard to break.
Yeah, but for me, you can't ignore it. You can't just wish it wasn't there and start to pass anyway. You have to deal with it.
No. I'm just talking about being preemptive and denying him the grip. Intercept the hand when it's reaching for the collar, as opposed to letting him get that deep grip and then trying to break it.
Yeah, good one. Because then you're in. Yeah, close guard with a deep collar grip. You're in trouble, and you got a lot to do to get to a good position.
But hey, you guys were talking about grips only in a gi and throwing me out of there. I believe it's so important. Also, no gi. You got to start standing too, and a grip is a collar tie. A grip is inside ties, bicep ties, and I've got to break those. To get it to where I need it. As I'm passing, if I pass with a knee cup pass and I don't grab an underhook, you got my back. So I do believe, they're very, 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 very important. No gi also.
Yeah,
I agree. And Gary's gripping game is going to still be effective if he puts on the gi for an event. But if I'm completely cloth dependent in my grip game and then I enter like a no gi tournament or go to an open mat that's no gi, I got to sort of scramble on the fly to come up with some things. So, yep.
You'll be scrambling.
Well, at my age, I don't know if you define it as a scramble.
You learned that scramble on the fly. So not only that, you got to fly a little bit. We touched on this one, but I want to hit it real quick. Does technique always beat size and strength? Is that a thing?
No.
I think that is probably one of the more frustrating things to hear. A student hearing it from a coach, or usually it goes one way. It's the person who's 300 pounds of mostly muscle telling it to the small person that technique is more important than the size. It's like, no, you are vastly stronger than me, and maybe your technique is on par with mine, but it's having a large effect on grappling. And I look at Lachlan Giles as he beat those big guys at ADCC. That was amazing. Why was that amazing? Because he was able to beat somebody who was much stronger than him. Would he smoke them even more if they were his size? Probably. But that's an amazing accomplishment because it's a big factor in the battle that they're engaging in. And I think that as a practitioner, thinking that technique will always beat size and strength is just a way to get frustrated. You're going to be that purple belt who taps to that white belt who's 280 and been training for a year solid, and it's like it's fine. If they get you, they get you. Or if they're cranking your neck and you want to, and you're worried you're going to get hurt, that's a great time to tap. So I think Gary and I are on the same page. Joe, your thoughts?
Well, when I talk to smaller people about this, I think kind of a misunderstanding is that if I'm trying to put a Kimura on a guy that's 100 pounds lighter than me, that if he's just got good technique, he'll be able to defend it. And I don't necessarily think that's the right way to look at it. I tell the smaller guys that size and strength has advantages, but so does small and quick. So it's a matter of finding where you have the advantages. And I tell them that, they have the advantage of being able to move in small spaces quickly and maybe get a step ahead. And I think maybe that's a more encouraging way for the smaller and weaker guy to look at it, is not that you can develop enough technique to combat a stronger guy's strength, but that you can develop some techniques and some skills to not be in a position where they can use their strength.
Yeah, but Joe, if you put a world-class grappler who's 100 pounds less than you on the mat, you're not going to come over with them because you're not going to be in that position. Like their technique is going to be not necessarily faster, but they're going to be safe as they grapple you. As they pull guard, they're going to sweep you. Then you're going to feel the pressure of somebody who's a lot smaller than you applied, and you're stuck. Like technique is a huge factor, but if skill levels approach to be similar, or or the strength factor is such a degree of variance, it makes a big difference.
Yes, and that's what I tell the smaller guys. Usually it's a white belt or because they're kind of struggling with this whole concept, and they think they'll never be able to have any advantages over the bigger and stronger guy. And that's what I tell them when I grapple with guys that are at my skill level or higher, and they're smaller. I feel like I'm always one step behind. It's like they go to my right, and when I turn to my right, then they're on my back, and so it's those kind of things that the smaller guy has to learn to exploit.
That's interesting. Here's another common one that we've heard: a black belt is a white belt that did not quit.
I love it.
Joe,
Gary,
go ahead, expand that.
We talk all the time about just show up. I think Byron and I and Joe, we're pretty good examples. I mean, I think if you saw me and Byron start, you would say these guys are garbage, and we were garbage. And but the one thing I know with Joe too, we've never been the greatest, never even been close to it, but
Joe had that run back a few years ago.
Yeah. And we keep showing up. We keep showing up and, have good attitudes and we try to get better. We are, as what a teacher would say, a good student. We're trying to learn. We're trying to do things that are going to help us. Joe and Byron, you are probably two of the most gracious people I've ever seen to help their teammates. You guys, are incredible with that, which in turn is going to make you guys better. And I mean, if you just stick with it, we're going to learn. Byron, you just said that the 53-year-old me is better than the 50-year-old me, the 51-year-old me. I know Joe's in the same boat. I know you're in the same boat. We're getting better. And I mean, I don't show up every day. I train, anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week. But I'm always training. I can think the only time I took off more than a week was when I hurt my ribs one time pretty bad and took off like 3 weeks. But, I just stick with it. Stick with it. Maybe you're not vibing with your school. Maybe there's another school that would, you'd be happy if you're thinking of quitting. If you're not having a great time, maybe a change of school, would be a better fit. But I just hope people realize that if you just keep showing up, you're gonna learn. It took me a long time till I started figuring stuff out. But once you start figuring it out, it even gets more fun.
So the problem I have with this quote or thought, that black belt is a white belt that never quit, is that it does hide a lot of the hard work. If you just show up every day and don't do much, that you're skipping a lot of the process that are the days you push yourself harder, the days that you go to a seminar and have a breakthrough, that you have there's more to jiu-jitsu than just not quitting. I do agree with the spirit of this quote though, because there are days that you feel
we'd have to write a whole book.
What was that?
The quote would be a whole book if you had to include all that in there.
Here's one, Joe. There's no substitute for mat time.
I think that you can say the same thing about that quote as you just said about a black belt being a white belt that didn't quit. All the mat time in the world, while it's better than no mat time, it's not all that valuable if it's not quality mat time. A guy should be sort of organized in the way he approaches his training. You should take things not to the point where you're not having fun, but you should take your mat time seriously, challenge yourself, have some goals. So I agree. There's no substitute for mat time, but quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Hey, what would you guys say? I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
First of all, I know I said on last show that I was training with somebody who actually rolls pretty good, but he just goes to open mats, and I found out he really knows nothing. Like that guy, I don't think he could put all the mat time in, but like Joe said, you're not going to get to that level without, drilling. But what would you think about somebody who only drilled and maybe did, without the mat time? Like, I think, I don't know how to say it, but
Yeah.
somebody who just drilled only.
There are cases for that, but usually I think.
I was just
go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, didn't you interview a couple of guys? They were from Sweden or Norway or something that they were pretty high level, and they had a very small.
That's right.
Yeah, they had a very small training circle, and they did a ton of drilling, but they had devised a system to it. It wasn't like just showing up and just, let's drill this sweep and let's drill this submission. So I guess in the right context, I could see it working. What do you think, Gary?
I think you would have to do positional sparring.
I think that's what they did. It wasn't just drilling techniques, but it was drill and then spar from that position.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's
I think you could be
time well spent.
Very solid grappler. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just want to show up and do the technique of an arm bar, 40 times, and then do the technique of a triangle 40 times, and do the technique of a sweep 40 times, and then you don't want to put any resistance to that or live action with it or anything like that, like I guess I question the reason, and if it's a valid reason, like maybe you're a surgeon that uses their hands a lot, and they just tolerance for a hand injury is super low. Like this is your living, and you're making a good living at it, and you want to learn some jiu-jitsu, but you don't want to risk injury, even a pinky. Like, okay, that's fine. I just question somebody who doesn't enjoy the process of grappling. And I worry that they don't actually like it, because if you like it, you love it. If you don't, then it's miserable, because it is a miserable process of getting choked and somebody laid on your head and it's smashing you. It's hard to breathe, but man, it's fun if you can learn to like it. So I just question, is there a reason why you're not wanting to spar? Maybe you're healing up. That's cool. But if it's just you don't like that part of jiu-jitsu, it's gonna be hard to get good at jiu-jitsu, because even that positional sparring that we call drilling sometimes, that's pretty much thing. Rolling. It's just rolling within the confinements of certain rules and goals, which is a great way to train.
For me, it's all about avoiding the inadvertent elbows and headbutts and stuff. I can't be getting this pretty face messed up.
That's true.
Well,
we do appreciate that.
Joe, you know what you need to do, and this has worked great for me. I know you live down in Houston, but get a Texans helmet and wear that while you're rolling. Works great.
I was thinking about a hockey mask.
You could do that too. The one thing is, I wear a Bills helmet while I roll, but the bad thing is a lot of times people grab that face mask, and I have hurt my neck a couple times that way.
That's a neck crank from hell.
Here's one that we hear a lot in martial arts communities. Iron sharpens iron. And I believe Joe wrote an article about this, and I think he's got some really interesting thoughts about this one.
Well, that's a way to put the pressure on.
I've never heard anybody say that. The stuff you wrote in the article, I've never heard anybody before or after talk about that the way you did. And I think it's perfect, because iron sharpens iron comes at you like, I got to train with the best of the best, or I'm not going to get my iron sharpened. Oh, that came out odd. But that's what it says. It's saying, you got to train with the best out there. You got to roll with all the belts that are your level or better in order to get good at jiu-jitsu. And Joe, you had a different approach. You talked about leather sharpening iron, and a stone can sharpen iron. There's lots of ways to get better, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit contextual, because iron sharpens iron. I think a lot of guys can look at it as you got to have those hard matches, and you got to be challenged every single time. But that's also a good way to just get beat down, right? And so sometimes, you got to take a softer approach. And sometimes you got to, I guess, seek the right medium out, so to speak. Like the toughest role in class might not always be the best role to accomplish my goal for that particular month or week or whatever. So, not sure what you're getting at, Byron, but I like it, and I think you got to just be, like everything else, be smart about the way you approach it.
Yeah, I like that, Joe. we're all unique individuals. What works for one person might not work for the other. And there are people who like to have that crazy death match every time. I can think of, I spent a couple years, it seemed like I was only rolling like 70, 80%, just flowing all the time. And I learned a ton at those times. So yeah, I like it. Everybody's a unique individual.
I will say this. I've heard before that if you're trying to get smarter, you're going to have a hard time doing it if you're always the smartest person in the room. And that's probably applicable to training as well. Because, you go to class, it's a big class, but you sort of have your circle within class that your favorite training partners, your favorite roles. If you're always the best one in those matches, you're probably not going to get as good as if you have a more varied. I don't think you always want to be the worst either. Then you're just, like, say, getting beat up. So you want to have a variety of skill levels and a variety of styles and approach it that way, maybe.
Yeah.
I like what you're saying, when you were talking about the intelligence, and see, when I hang out with you guys, I run into that same problem.
Yeah. You're the smartest guy in the room for sure.
Okay, let's go to another one here. This, I don't know if you remember this, Gary, but I heard it a lot from our coach, Johnny Jiu-Jitsu. No base, no case. And he was referring to when you got swept as you're trying to pass a guard. So in the process of a guard pass, yeah?
I think of that kind of the same thing as position before submission.
Yep.
I think of, you need to, be steady, be solidify position you're in. Otherwise, you're going to, get swept or, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, if what you're doing to try to pass the guard, it puts you at a good chance of getting swept, you shouldn't do that. You should be able to have a good solid base while you do your techniques. Pretty simple one there. Here's one from our friend Brian Marvin. ABC, always be choking. And I think this one has a little bit of, I don't think it takes itself too seriously, but clearly Brian wouldn't advocate, if somebody has your back, you should be trying to figure out how to choke them from there. So always is a bit much, but like if you roll with Brian Marvin, you're always in a bit of trouble.
He's always bringing the offense.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, what I want to do in jiu-jitsu and what I like about jiu-jitsu is submissions. That's, my goal is to get a submission. So I think what he's saying is, bring some offense to the game. Try to finish this thing.
Yeah, ABC works well because it's catchy, but I agree with Gary. It's whatever you kind of focus on. You can do ABP. Always be passing if you're,
yep.
That's
like
kind of thing.
When I roll with Joe, it's ABT. I'm always going to be tapping.
Always going to be AGB.
Yep.
Here's another one. This one I think is from Carlos Machado. The ground is my ocean. I'm a shark, and most people don't even know how to swim. That's I think that's one that people like to just kind of quote a bit because it shows the depth of jiu-jitsu, and if you don't know jiu-jitsu at all, you literally don't know how to swim on the ground. We mentioned hockey, we mentioned skating on this one, and
Bonnie Blair.
Yes, Bonnie. That's your buddy, but so I don't mention this one to the law enforcement recruits that are going through the ground fighting. I tell a little example, and it's a similar spirit of this one, but I think it makes a little bit more sense. I guess I'll just go into my little spiel. Guys, how many of you guys have done any sort of grappling or ground fighting before, and we're starting from a pretty early place? So, like if you've wrestled or done some jiu-jitsu or whatever, and there'll be a class of 20 or 30, and a couple of them will raise their hand. Most of them just kind of look at you oddly, and they don't know what to make of it. Then I say that jiu-jitsu or ground fighting is a skill-based activity. And yes, size and strength are big factors, but I compare it to hockey. And so this is what I tell the recruits that I work with. I say, how many of you guys know how to play hockey? And we're living in Kansas, and it is so rare to get someone to raise their hand, but that's fine if somebody does. But usually they all look at me with blank stares. And then I say, how many of you guys know how to ice skate? And usually 1 or 2 out of about 30 will raise a hand, but most of us don't know how to ice skate. We're not from upstate New York, Gary.
Upstate New York.
So after I've established that, I being strong, being fast, those things are important to skating and to playing hockey. That's definitely true. But if you don't know how to ice skate, you're going to be terrible at hockey. And today, as we get you involved in ground fighting for law enforcement, we're going to teach you how to skate a little bit. You're not going to be great at it. But the beauty is, most people that are out there walking around and you know that you're going to be dealing with in the public don't even know how to skate. So if you can at least get these skates on and get to be moving in the right direction, you're going to have a huge advantage on that hockey field versus people who don't know how to skate. So it doesn't take a lot to make those first few gains in your grappling, but we need to focus and work hard to get there. But it'll soon be a big advantage if you could stick with it a while and add some grappling into your training. And that's just kind of a thing that I do because they're looking at some of the classmates are small framed individuals that are around 100-pound mark, and some of them are just beasts, 280, and they're looking, I have to grapple, I'm going to be grappling these people. Sometimes, we'll work in a safe manner. We go for 0 injuries here. But sometimes, just knowing, hopping on someone's back or securing a position or working as a team, you're not just grappling one-on-one necessarily in law enforcement. You work as a team. And in these things, technique can play a huge factor when the other person doesn't even know how to ice skate. And that's my example. It's kind of similar to the grounds is my ocean and I'm a shark, except for I've never swam with a shark before, but I've fallen on the ice before. And any child who could skate and hold a hockey stick would annihilate me on the ice. Not even close. Like I would be suffering to stand up.
But what if you pulled guard?
I would have to pull guard. That would be my best option as a goalie. Oh, that would hurt. So there's that one. We're running a little long on time. Here's one that could take the entire episode. I'll throw out there see if anybody takes the bait. Guard pulling is for wimps, or some derogatory comment towards people who pull guard. Any comments, gentlemen?
Well, I think that guard pulling works best if you have a plan.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. And I don't call anybody a wimp. Everybody's got their own style and their own what they want to do. But if you're guard pulling just because you don't want to put in the work to do takedowns, that's probably not quite as honorable as the guy who, and if you're guard pulling just to get the fight on the ground and then you'll figure out what to do, that's probably not quite as honorable or make as much sense as the guy. Some guys pull guard and they're pulling a submission or they're pulling a sweep. They're not just pulling you on top of them and then figuring out what to do. But world's too small to be getting into tough guy nonsense.
That's not the jiu-jitsu game. Is not the tough guy competition either. And Gary, who's probably the best no-gi grappler we have in the planet right now?
The King, Gordon Ryan.
Gary, we could barely hear you.
Oh, sorry. I had my microphone off. I would say the King, Gordon Ryan.
Yeah. And how does he start a lot of matches? With the guard pull.
Pulling guard.
Yeah.
But he really has been working on his wrestling. He's actually, taking on a couple different wrestlers. I think he took on PD3 and he took on Zane the Train or somebody like that, if I remember right. But yeah, I respect that. I have no problem with guard pulling. I do think if you want to be a complete grappler, you do need to train wrestling. But shoot, Gordon pulls guard. You get Lachlan Giles or pulling guard. Craig Jones. Those guys they're gonna make your day very, very bad and the match very, very quick.
Yeah. here's the last one I've got written down here. Something about like blank doesn't tap to pressure, whether it be me or blue belts or black belts don't tap to pressure. Something like that doesn't tap to pressure.
I've tapped to pressure.
As have I. It's been a while, but I absolutely will. If I feel like I'm going to get damaged from the pressure, which can be a thing. If I roll with Gordon Ryan, he could send me to the emergency room due to pressure. Like he's going to be breaking ribs and doing damage to my spine. Who knows? Like I'll tap well before that's going to happen. Joe, any additions to the tapping the pressure is not a thing?
Well, I'll just also say that it's not just being too tough to tap the pressure. Also, it's being too tough to tap to submissions that aren't necessarily locked on correctly.
Ooh.
And so you're like, I'm not going to tap. This isn't really a choke, But if you're getting your head tore off, it's probably better to tap and not have a sore neck for the next 3 weeks.
Good one. Good addition and alteration of that one. The beauty of jiu-jitsu is we could tap and restart, and it's not a big deal. So getting pressure for a 5-minute sparring session is no way to enjoy or learn jiu-jitsu. And sometimes it's better to move on. It's always better to escape and to work your technique and to earn that. But if someone's going to be kind of a jerk about their pressure and apply it in ways that are not appropriate, I think you're done rolling with that person. Like, that's okay too. Any additions, my friends?
How about tapping to exhaustion?
If you're exhausted, you got other problems. You either went one too many rounds, or you need to work on the cardio a little bit. But to ask a teammate or even a competitor, hey, I'm done, man. I'm no longer competitive at this. You don't want to mentally frame yourself as a quitter, but sometimes it's good to push, and sometimes it's understandable. You bit off. Hey, it's my last round. Let's roll with you. And this person is just taking it to you the whole time. It's like you either deal with that or you pass on the rest of the round. And if that's their goal, if Gordon Ryan wants to lock up with you and get you to tap from exhaustion, could he do it? I think so. I think he can get basically anybody who's not an elite grappler to say, I'm done, I quit. And so just allow yourself that grace that it's sometimes appropriate. It never feels good. It always feels bad. But don't be so hard on yourself to where you don't want to train anymore, or you're terrible at grappling. Allow yourself a little bit of grace and saving face to even just yourself. Like, don't be so hard on yourself, guys. Thoughts on that one, Joe? You brought it up.
Well, I one time kind of denied a guy a tap. He come in, and I think for 2 classes in a row, he come in and just kicked my ass with, just ferocity, not like he really was winning the match. And then when I got a sweep or finally got him calmed down, then he tapped. And about the 3rd class he did it, I let up on whatever technique I was doing. But then I said, nope, we're starting from right here and we're finishing the round. I said, you're 25 years old. You're not going to come in here and kick my ass for 3.5 minutes and then tap and just sit the rest of the round out because you blew your wad too soon.
No wonder nobody rolls with Joe.
No, I think I did it in a decent way. I didn't then go on and crush him for the next 2 minutes, but trying to get him to see that you got to set a pace that you can work. It's one thing, like Byron was talking about, you're at the end of a class and maybe you're older or you took some time off, you're out of shape, whatever, and to say, man, I've given it all I got and I'm not offering you a good roll anymore and I'm about to throw up. That's one thing. But to just come on and go at your opponent like a wounded cougar, and then 3 minutes into the round you're done and you don't want to tough out the rest of the round, I think I hope I did it in a way that was decent. I was trying to offer the guy a valuable lesson.
Does he still train?
I haven't seen him in a while.
That could be for different reasons.
But I don't think it was because of me.
Yeah. I say if he's still in the mat, you're good to go. There's a question up in the air. Maybe not. Like other things happen. He probably didn't have the best mentality about jiu-jitsu anyway, or maybe life happens and he's got to do something else. But I mean, lots of stuff happens to grapplers and they don't come back. But if you said, yeah, he still trains, then you're definitely good.
No, but ultimately, if he couldn't get over that mindset, then he's not going to succeed at jiu-jitsu.
That's true. That is a good one. All right, guys, let's hit this article real quick, and then we'll say adios to our friends. This is from our friend Oliver at BjjTribes.com, and Oliver is a listener to the show, and this is a really nice website. I know the amount of work and dedication it takes to do some work on the website, and he's doing great. I just picked one of the many articles that were there, and this article is titled, "When Should You Switch Your BJJ Gyms?" Or gym. You probably only have one gym. And we don't need to dive super deep into this, but this is an article that could really help guide you if this is on your mind. Is this an appropriate time? What are good reasons? Am I going to be, labeled something bad by my coach? The first reason is that the gym doesn't suit your style. And hopefully you started off in a way where you tested out the gyms that were around your area and you've got one that was appropriate for your jiu-jitsu and what you were looking for. But maybe that changes. Maybe you went from a self-defense style of jiu-jitsu school to, I want to start doing competitions here, and we're doing a lot of knife training, and I'd rather not do that with my time. And so that would be a valid reason to evaluate what you want to do as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Looking down the list here, there's quite a few things, and he goes into some other conversations and examples. Another thing he's got is the coach is a bad person, and you don't want to be associated with that person anymore. That's interesting, and I think that we have a low degree of this happening, but sure enough, we do get coaches sometimes that have problems off the mat that just you don't want to be around. Without going into too many details, guys.
Yeah, this can also not necessarily be quite so sinister. I trained at a gym for a while, and unfortunately, COVID kind of drove the guy out of business, which is sad. The coach wasn't a bad person. The guys at the gym weren't bad guys, but it was kind of a tough guy gym. It was kind of a lot of 12-year-old guy type humor on the mats, and
Gary would have fit in great.
Yeah, Gary would have fit just perfect. But but that's not an environment for everybody, and sometimes you change. Like a guy might join that gym at 22 years old and he fits in just fine, and a few years later he's married, he's having kids, and he might look across town and see a gym that's run a little bit differently and think that might be a better fit right now. I've got kids who are going to be doing jiu-jitsu in a couple of years, and I'm not 100% sure I want them training at this gym. But, man, that'd be a hard switch to make. You're friends with the gym. I think it takes a lot of maturity. I think that's probably the one thing that is really important here is to handle these situations with some grace and some maturity.
Yeah, the relationship built between a coach and a student and other students, some of those bonds are really strong, and they don't always go, like the bond isn't always the same way between the two people. It's not always equal. I've seen coaches really devastated by students leaving and not doing that well. Like really hurt by. I thought we had a great coach-student relationship, and you just bailed, and now you're training somewhere else. Like that can be devastating to a coach, and it's just like a breakup of a relationship. It's like, give me a reason, give me something to hold on. Like, maybe you moved to a different side of town. Maybe some of the students that are training here you have a problem with. Maybe it is me, but I think a lot of times the non-answer, the you know what, I'm not going to pay my my dues anymore, and I'm packing up and I'm going to this other gym. That can be very hard on coaches because most coaches don't do this for the money, and most coaches don't just see you as a customer. They see you as a member of their Jitsu family. And when somebody up and leaves with no reason, it's tough. A good reason to move, and it's fairly easy on a coach, is just literally you're moving. Maybe you're moving to a different city or state or even country. In that process, if you can involve your coach, I can't imagine a coach being upset about that, or not understanding that you got a new job in a different state. They might even be able to guide you into looking at what gyms are available, because a lot of coaches are well connected in the community, and they recommend, hey, check this one out, and maybe this one around here might be a good gym as well. There's, I don't know, anything else we want to hit in this article? We're going pretty long today, gentlemen.
Oh, just real quick. No, she didn't, Gary. You can't fool us. What are your thoughts on tribalism? I think probably there's it's not like either good or bad. It's one of those things that can be carried too far, but in a way, isn't tribalism kind of what we're drawn to? Isn't that part of the camaraderie and the feeling like we have a place that is home, a home away from home kind of thing?
Yeah, good question, Joe. And clearly we have nothing but just ideas about this because that's such a big thing. But yeah, I do think you're right. People are drawn to be a part of a tribe, whether you like a certain sports team or a political affiliation or, your Jiu-Jitsu gym. You get that feeling of belonging. That's a super normal thing to get, and to be a part of that. That is your tribe. That's your team, and you always want to root for your tribe, and you always want to do your best to support your tribe. In reality, the people in the other tribes are mostly very similar to you and your tribe. You'd probably get along great at the gym that you think they're not very nice there, or maybe you don't like their style of jiu-jitsu. You probably go over there and within a short amount of time be accepted as who you are and be doing great at most gyms. It's just important to not view the other tribes as something that's bad. That's the bad gym over there. That does happen, but it's not very common. I think about, politics, and, here we are in October 25th. Politics, nationwide and locally is ramping up. And it's funny that people think they get one day I got 10 political mailers in one day. It was just I laid them out on the counter. I'm like, this is a lot of political ads. And to think that one side of this, right or left, are being honest and the other side is being dishonest, that's my, whatever your tribe is, my tribe are the good ones that don't lie. Nothing on these political ads can be taken as true. They're all straw manning the other person's argument. They're all misrepresenting things. You have to, if you're going to make a political ad, you got to make it strong, and you got to make it your money worth spent. That's what they do. And just to think that your side is always going to be right or always going to be honest, if you're believing that, you're firmly set in a tribe, I guess is one way to say it. But most people are good people. That's something I believe. And even if they're in a different tribe, they still are going to be good and have, similar goals in life and similar, I'm getting off on a tangent. We don't want to talk politics on here, but both sides are lying. And if you look at your side and say, my side is the only side that doesn't lie, you're not giving your side a fair evaluation. Both sides are doing jiu-jitsu. Both are full of people who want to improve as martial artists. Both people maybe listen to the podcast or something similar. You watch the same tournaments. You enjoy the same competitors. You root for the same people in the UFC. We're all part of a bigger tribe that's grappling. Let's not fight amongst ourselves too much. Gary, what you got on the tribes?
Well, I was just going to say I'm part of the BjjBrick tribe, and anybody
that
who
makes three of us
is on the other side,
Yeah, it's not a very big tribe, but and Gary's the chief.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, actually, I think Byron's the chief.
Joe's the one with all the wisdom.
But I did think about leaving the tribe once because the chief is a bad person.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yep, you're going to break his heart, Gary. But check out.
I don't think he's a bad person, but I definitely think the services are no longer worth the money. So.
That being said, podcast is free, but check out our audiobooks in our shop. There's the first year of BJJ if you're new to grappling, and what's the other one? 6 games for BJJ. We talked about drilling and altering what you do to perform on the mats, and that's really what that book is about. They're audiobooks that I did, and if you want to support the show, our Patreon page is where you would go to support the podcast per episode, which has lately been one per month, so that's pretty darn cheap. And then you had a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch and a sticker. So it'll literally take us months to pay that off or to make our money back on that investment. But I do want you guys to have the gi patches that if you're a supporter of the show. So support us on Patreon, and I'll get that sticker and gi patch mailed out to you as soon as I can.
And don't forget, we also have a brick for sale in the shop.
True.
Any updates on your project, Byron?
I've been sidelined with a lot of other things. I think it's just like one of those things where if I don't have a deadline, it's really hard to get it done. And this story is way more deep than I would anticipate. Joe's talking about, I'm trying to make a episode about Kimura and who he was as a martial artist, the story of that submission, and just kind of show that in an entertaining, interesting way that anybody could listen to it, whether you're a Jiu-Jitsu fan or not. It would make sense to listen to it from start to beginning, and you would gain some Jiu-Jitsu knowledge and knowledge about the history of what we're doing in Judo as well, obviously. But I'm working on that, and it is different than it's. So to call someone, interview them, and to publish that was routine for me, and I could do that, pretty consistently for I don't know how many years it was, to 300 plus episodes. But to create an episode about a topic like that, and to do investigating and story creating and organizing the thoughts in an entertaining way, that's different beast. But I'm working on it, and I think as the winter months approach, I'll be inside more, and it'll be a little bit easier for me to buckle down better. So, honest assessment, harder than I thought.
Well, looking forward to it whenever you get it done.
Well, thank you, Joe, and I appreciate the encouragement. Until next time, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, train as often as you can in this current environment, and we'll see you on the mat someday, guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can visit our website at BjjBrick.com for more good times. Swing by and like our Facebook page. Our email is BjjBrick@gmail.com.